Hello everyone, it's the Fat Philosopher here. Today what I'm going to talk about is a book, an audiobook, the Tony Iommi Iron Man, My Journey Through Heaven and Hell with Black Sabbath, which is the autobiography of Tony Iommi. Give you my thoughts of what I thought about it. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm not actually a Black Sabbath fan. You know, I acknowledge the songs, and they do have some catchy songs, but I just thought there is this, better produced, better, more talented bands out there that I listened to when I was young. However, saying that, I did know, being a young metalhead, I of course acknowledge that Black Sabbath had a huge influence on the metal community, and with Tony, like me, is like left-handed guitarist, and he went through lots of trials and tribulations when he cut off his fingers. He still played the guitar, so I just kind of respected him a bit, and I was interested to see how this book would go out. Usually when you read these rock and roll books, there's always the three topics, right? You got sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and sometimes they focus on one more than the other. Like if you read a Dave Mustaine autobiography, it's all kind of about the drugs, right? You read something about Led Zeppelin, and there's a lot about the sex in there, right? And not often you get something that focuses mostly on the rock and roll. But this is what it is. This is a book, maybe because it's an autobiography, that really focuses on the rock journey Tony has taken over the years, which I was kind of interested in. I thought it was a very, refreshing read. First of all, let's go through the actual way of it. First, it's the reader of the book, a former drummer of Black Sabbath, which is not surprising because I think everybody and their dog in England was part of Black Sabbath at one point or another. There must have been like 30 members over the years, right? And he reads with an English accent and kind of in an enjoyable way. Kind of sounds like the rock guy in Thor Ragnarok. He's got kind of a Forrest Gump type of reading to it, where it makes like Tony seem like he's kind of just he's just witnessing events around him that he's not actually a part of a lot of the time there. And he gets kind of reads in such a way as he's like surprised. So it's like, well, me and Geezer went to Ozzy's room and there's lots of cocaine. He asked if we wanted to do some, so we did. And like he's like surprised in every sentence. So, which I kind of like that reading counter. It's kind of like he's kind of in awe of his life, which is kind of an interesting way to read it, I find it. And the way it's written is actually really well. It's written in like short, 5-minute little stories. It's like Uncle Tony is sitting you down at the fireplace, telling you a little story. Yeah, I remember the time me and Ozzy did this, or I remember the time me and Dio did this, and stuff like that. It comes out like a little fireplace type of book. It's told over 50 odd years, from 1960 to 2010. It's written in 2011, and it's all written pretty well chronologically. Sometimes he'll jump a few years when he does a chapter on one of his wives. They're all self-contained. Like when he doesn't introduce his wives over and over again. Just, okay, this is a chapter about this wife, chapter about this wife, chapter about this wife, chapter about this girlfriend, kind of like that. And so sometimes when those take several years, we'll bounce back to where the narrative was before he read that. So it's a very enjoyable listen and a short listen, and you find a lot of interesting things in this book here. Some of it's surprising, like I did not know that Tony Iommi was in Jethro Tull before. I did not know that Michael Bolton once auditioned for Black Sabbath. These are all kind of things that kind of a little bit surprising to there. I also thought that the Spinal Tap Stonehenge Pillars was a spoof of Led Zeppelin. The song remains the same, but actually that was something that Black Sabbath did the other way. They put an order in centimeters, and the person thought it was inches, so it was like 3 times the size it was supposed to be. So that's kind of interesting to see. Things I liked about the book: he does go into good detail about his philosophy of music and things that he did. And he does go into being left-handed and how hard it is to find things for left-handeds. And he goes into good detail at the beginning of the book about how he cut off his fingers and the amount of effort he had to do to still play guitar. Like, after reading it, you think, if that was me, I wouldn't be playing anymore after that, or I'd switch hands, but no, he was really dedicated to play left-handed and continue on as he was. And so I kind of really admire that his skill in that, and his determination to get through it all. Other little insights I found very interesting. When he compares bands a little bit, like he thought that, you know, with the big three in the 70s, you have Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, and Led Zeppelin. He said he didn't really see Led Zeppelin as a rival. He's actually good friends with John Bonham, but he did see Deep Purple as a bit of a rival. And the way he characterized his sound, he said his sound was like a wall of sound made by him and Geezer Butler, the bassist. But he thought Zeppelin was a sound based mostly on the drummer, John Bonham, which I thought was kind of an interesting take about that. You know, a lot of people say Page was kind of the main, but he kind of put John Bonham as being the catalyst of the Led Zeppelin there. So that's kind of interesting. There's another interesting things are things that he leaves out. Like he does not go into, you know, the whole, you know, black magic's Satanism that's kind of associated with the band. As you know, he's in other bands that, you know, not named Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath actually, I guess, is named after a horror movie back in the 60s. The band was originally named Earth, but they were misbooked because there was another band named Earth in England, and when the promoter realized that he booked the wrong band, he refused to pay them. So they decided to change their name so they won't get mistaken again. And he doesn't go really much into the whole Satanism issue. Only 2 times. One time he talks about these Satanists who come bother him in his hotel in California. And he treats it like this, like big trouble. These guys are stupid. And then he goes into it about how they were kind of banned from playing in Mexico City because the mayor thought they were satanic. But other than that, he doesn't go into it too much. Like they go into Aleister Crowley and all the stuff that Ozzy Osbourne and like Jimmy Page are into, apparently at the time. He actually characterized his music as being political, like in the second album, and also he kind of puts, you know, a lot of the Satanist stuff on like Geezer's shoulders. And when Geezer wrote the lyrics, so whatever was said in there, that's all his doing. I was just kind of riffing around, you know. This really talks about how they make their albums. Like, he just kind of comes up the riff and they kind of flesh it out really quickly. Paranoid was only written like 10 minutes and stuff like that, and that whole album was written like 6 hours. Personally, I think kind of shows. Probably should have took a little more time with the album, but it's amazing that they can crank out music in that such short time period there. You know, people thought Led Zeppelin 1 was made fast when it was like 36 hours in the studio. This is like 1/6 of that. Future me here. I forgot to mention about guitars that Tony mentions that he started his career using mostly Fender Strat that he loved very much, but then that broke down and he had to go find another guitar, which just happened to be an SG. I found this kind of curious because it kind of mirrors Jimmy Page, who started his career mostly with Led Zeppelin. We used the Telecaster until that kind of broke down, didn't work properly, and he had to switch over as well. So it's kind of an interesting parallel there between the two. Another issue he doesn't talk about really is like the heavy metal and his role in it so much. You know, he actually doesn't say the word heavy metal so much. It's kind of like considering himself to be in a rock and roll band, which is something, you know, Ozzy used to always say. We're rock and roll kind of thing. Actually, the only time he mentions metal, I think, in the book is in reference to other bands. There's a place where he goes like metal bands such as Judas Priest and Led Zeppelin. So he calls Led Zeppelin and Judas Priest metal bands, but he doesn't really refer to him as himself. He kind of takes that whole topic. So if you want to know his philosophy on metal or what he thought about metal, it's not in this book. The book focuses a lot then on the people in the band and how he tries to keep the bands together and what happens with these very people and little incidents, like when the drummer quits or the singer quits or, you know, Geezer Butler quits, and how he got things together. He portrays himself as like, you know, the reluctant hero. Like he didn't want to lead the band, but everybody else was such morons that he just had to step up and take care of it. Which kind of gets ironic at the times when it turns out that you know, he's being scammed out of his money by some of the promoters or his management. Like it doesn't, you should have saw that one coming there, Tony. You know, the guy You know, when your manager asks you for bail money, promises to pay you back, that's probably not a good sign to keep that management, right? Yeah. So yeah, those a couple of things that you know didn't go so much. A lot of things though, he does go into some things, like the way he fixes his hand was very interesting, and he made a couple of declarations. Like he said that because of his hand, he's the one who developed multiple thicknesses of string. You know, like he said that thinner strings, he needed thinner strings, so he put banjo strings on, because in England all the strings were all one size. Nobody would make any lighter gauge or heavier gauge, and that's something he invented. I don't know how true that is. I thought they had some lighter gauge strings around 65 or 66, but no, he seems to seem that it was him first using banjo string, and then as he got famous, you know, the company started to cater to making multiple gauge strings. That's kind of interesting stuff. So would I recommend this book? Yeah, I would. It's a good read. It doesn't focus, like I say, too much like on like sex. You know, the only time they ever talk about groupies is one time after he got divorced. He was kind of in a depressed, and he went through a couple of days of multiple women. But other than that, he doesn't go into that. He also doesn't really go on to drugs. Like, they're there, but it doesn't seem like he's kind of detached to it. He'd be like, yeah, we went to this party, and Ozzy was doing cocaine, and this guy was doing heroin. But he didn't seem to mention himself so much, or she didn't sense that he was doing something bad. Like, when you read, like, Dave Mustaine's biography, it's like, oh, I relapsed, and I went back on the needle, and you know, drug is kind of treated like a demon, but he doesn't like skip drugs, but Tony kind of just treats them like they're there. You know, yeah, there's drugs. So what, kind of thing, right? So if you want a book that really kind of focuses, like, you know, less on the depressing parts of rock and roll, like some of these, like the drug addiction or the groupies, and some of the focuses a lot more on the music and the characters involved and kind of funny incidents that happened, I'd recommend this book. So once again, the book is called Iron Man: My Journey Through Heaven and Hell with Black Sabbath by Tony Iommi. And the last thing, my wife thinks I need merch for some reason, so I've actually made some merch, and I'm going to throw it on the screen now. So if you're ever in need of a Buddhist statue playing a left-handed guitar, I'm the place to go. So anyways, take care, and I hope you enjoyed the book if you decide to download it. Salut!